You're listening to Spotlight, the podcast that fosters connections with veterans and military spouses. Here's your host, Bob Louthan.
Welcome, everybody. This is your host, Bob Louthan, and welcome to the Spotlight on the VeteranCrowd Network. Our guest today, Angela McConnell. She is a professor at George Washington University, but most importantly, the founder and CEO of what I refer to as Nova Vets, the Northern Virginia Veterans Association. Give a shout out to our mutual friend, Carrie Kirk, who is on the board of Nova Vets and connected us. Welcome to the program, Angela. Thank you for stepping into the spotlight.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here. And thanks, yes, to Carrie for doing our initial introduction and now this.
So very good work that you're doing. Before we get into Nova Vets, though, I want to go back and talk about your career path. You spent quite a while in the United States Army. How did that happen?
Well, probably like a lot of kids my age back in the mid 80s, I was looking for a way to pay for my college nutrition. Had two older brothers, loved playing in the dirt, loved camping. So I thought the Army would be my natural transition. And yeah, so that my dad was very happy to get me signed up sooner than later. And I joined up and was in 87. And that started my career in the Army.
I did a lot of camping and Boy Scouts, but there's nothing about the Army that I would refer to as camping. So go back to that. So what was your, when you entered the Army, what became your specialty? What was your MOS?
Yeah, so I was in the 91 series, and specifically I worked in biomedical research. So my first duty station was at Walter Reed when it was in DC at the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology. And then after 2 years there, I went from like E1 to E5 in 2 years, one of those hard chargers, and moved to the Uniformed Services University at Bethesda, Maryland, and spent another 2.5 years there at the university working and training medical students.
But you're a Mustang, though. You ended up as an officer, right? When did that happen?
Yeah, that is right. Well, I got out of active duty the mid 91 after Desert Storm, Desert Shield, and went inactive for a little bit and just really missed it. I was working full time for the FDA and biomedical research still, and just it kept pulling me back. So before I got completely out, I decided to go through officers candidate school in North Carolina and get commissioned as an officer.
Were you back on active duty at that point in time then?
No, I was the regular National Guard reserve time.
Ah,
So supposedly an officers candidate school, which you had to apply for, it was 2 weeks, out of the year, and then one week in a month. Well, an officers candidate school, it's every weekend and every week of the month as you're preparing for that next weekend. And yes, I had 2 weeks at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and then 2 weeks at Bragg in the middle of summer at the end. So not quite the plan that I laid out for myself, but well worth it. And I have so many comrades and people from those days still in OCS, and it's been just a joy watching everybody kind of rise through the ranks and seeing what they're doing now in the North Carolina National Guard.
well, congratulations on that military career. So you did a lot of studying during this time, earned your PhD in health administration.
Yes, that's right. I sure did.
And in health, tell everybody what that is. I mean, I think people have a general idea of health administration, but it's probably a pretty broad category.
It is. And, my master's was in public administration. So because my focus was integrative medicine and healthcare, what I teach at George Washington, the health administration piece is broad. However, I tailored my PhD studies to integrative patient-centered and holistic care for people. So my focus was that, and health administration again is extremely broad with regards to understanding the economics of healthcare, the patients of our healthcare systems here in the U.S. and internationally, and everything that encompasses that piece. And my focus was intervention.
Right. Okay. So when did you start teaching? How long have you been doing that? Before we jump into Nova Vets, how long have you been teaching at George Washington?
Well, how long I've been teaching goes back to my Army days. So, in the military, as a leader in the military, you're always teaching, that next important, in in the road, down the road type of combat training that we have to do and keep on top of. So I've been training basically my whole adult life, but with George Washington, I've just been with them for almost 2 years now. So not a long time.
Good, good. Well, let's jump into Nova Vets. As I said earlier, Kerry Kirk, our friend, I guess he's on the board. You guys have been doing some good things. You founded Nova Vets now 8 years ago. Has it been quite that long?
Yeah, it's about 6 years ago, founded in 2015.
2015. And what was the original charter of Nova Vets, and what did you recognize at the time that was the challenge?
I've been involved in multiple other volunteer organizations before that here, in Prince William County in Northern Virginia. And a theme that I noticed with working with these different volunteer organizations was that many veterans didn't know where to get their resources, that they didn't know if they were eligible for certain services and resources. And there was no like one place for veterans to go and kind of figure this out. There's many things on legal support or employment or homelessness, all kinds of different potential services and resources, but they're very dependent on when you served, where you served, how long you served, if you were Army or Air Force or Marine or Coast Guard. I mean, there's just like so many different pieces and factors that play into what you could be eligible for. And this was one of my struggles, prior to Nova Veterans, just trying to figure out how to help my veterans. Many of them were medically transitioning out of either Quantico or Fort Belvoir. So I was working with those, and mainly female too, that had some kind of a medical issue, and that's why they were being transitioned out of the military. So that kind of like sparked my interest in why isn't there like one place. And once when I was an officer in the military, my whole branch was intelligence. So we were always working from like a systems approach and intelligence. I mean, you may have a group on the ground. There's multiple assets, coordinating to get the information to that person on the ground. And I was wondering why we couldn't do a similar type of system to help veterans, receive the services that they've earned and deserved. And in 2014, I started working with some people in other veteran organizations, and we decided to kick this off and develop the Northern Virginia Veterans Association. What we did down the road was really tailor it to veterans that needed the one-on-one help, because we found there's multiple databases and database systems, the National Resource Directory, and so many others. If you can get through a computer system and fill out an on-site or a web-based application, then you can probably find out what these services and resources are. But if you're elderly, like the veterans we work with, or you have health challenges, or you're underserved in some way, it becomes more than a challenge. It becomes impossible to really understand, what you can get and how to get it and how to keep receiving services and resources.
Let me unpack this a little bit and tear apart some of the things you just said. So you said you go back to 2014, you were working with some other veteran service organizations and you got to know them. Which ones were sort of at the core, the inner circle in the beginning back there?
There was one called the Wounded Warrior Mentoring Organization, and that is a nonprofit, and they specifically work with active military who are medically transitioning. So my work with them was to go to Fort Belvoir or to Quantico and work one-on-one with their active military person and find out and take care of basically anything they might need. Sometimes they needed someone to be in the hospital with them because they have no family or friends nearby. Sometimes they needed someone to take care of their pet. Many were looking for finding a home outside of base once they did get discharged, and some needed legal support in other areas depending on what their rating was, and other things that go along factor into someone who's medically retiring. So given some training, but not necessarily all the training you need, there was a lot of research to be done on my part in figuring out, what services and resources were available. And phone call after phone call was, oh, sorry, we don't work with post 9/11. We only work with, Vietnam veteran, era veterans, or, we don't work with this population because they make too much money, or we don't work with that population because they're not service connected with the body. So it's just like phone call after intersection with all these different organizations that are here to support veterans, but none of them could support my veterans, or at least the ones I was trying to reach out to. So that struggle became very real to me as a professional, thinking I'm pretty savvy at getting, through and researching these things, not being able to get the help and support that my veterans needed.
So let me break this down a little bit further. As you started out working with transitioning veterans, how big is the scope, of the population, I guess, of veterans in need in the Northern Virginia area? What is your geographic reach? Because you're not going everywhere.
And let me start with geographic reach because that'll kind of outline the numbers. So we are the kind of the traditional Northern Virginia, Prince William County up into Fairfax, out to Loudoun, but we've grown organically over the years, and we've kind of grown into Fauquier County, Stafford, down to Culpeper and Orange. So our area of operation is growing. However, the population we support are the elderly, those with disabilities and other challenges that really need the one-on-one case management and advocacy. So the numbers in the Northern Virginia region, not counting those other lower and western regions that we cover, is around 60,000 veterans with disability. And or are elderly. And elderly, defined by this statistic, is over 65. So we'll,
Hmm.
we'll we'll work with anyone that needs our help. But just to give you some rough numbers, around 60,000 or so veterans that meet those specific criteria.
Is part of the problem because it's complicated? Is that part of the issue? It's just overwhelming to figure out I don't know, is it red tape?
Part of it is because it's very complicated and convoluted. We have we have government agencies that help with, starting at the federal level with the VA, or state level here with the Department of Veteran Services. There's county level, veteran services as well. Then you have your nonprofits, that's veteran service organizations and other, veteran centric nonprofits that provide specific services. And then you may have some for-profit organizations that do things, scalable or pro bono for veterans. So you have literally thousands of potential services and resources, and trying to determine, what your veteran can take part in is a huge challenge. We have veterans that are perfectly capable of getting through the website, but they're tired of running into, roadblocks, people not returning their calls, mailboxes that are filled, not understanding the application because they can be very complicated. So lots of bureaucracy and just complications with trying to get through these online systems.
If there literally are thousands of resources out there, I don't know how any individual could get their arms around that. I mean, that sounds, are a lot of these services overlapping? Is there some redundancy in what people are trying to do?
I think there's too much redundancy in areas, and without making this sound bad, like around homelessness, there's a lot of homeless associations to help veterans, where I would like to see some of them get together and work more together and fill some of the gaps that need to be met, instead of all of them providing a particular service, in redundancy. So there are multiple organizations with transportation, providing veterans transportation rides, but none of them fill like a 24/7 gap in providing transportation, or we work on the holidays, or we can get an appointment set for your veteran to travel within a day. It takes 2 weeks to schedule an appointment. And that's just not reality when you have to see a doctor or go to a follow-up after a surgical appointment, and things of that nature. So lots of redundancy, way too much in my opinion. So
Right. Let's back up a little bit further. So most of the folks you're dealing with are older. They have some kind of a medical condition, and that seems to be their problem. And I agree with you that there tend to be these stovepipes in the veteran service organization space. Stop veteran suicide, homelessness, financial difficulty, transitioning in jobs. Those tend to be big ones. PTSD obviously is a big one. All of this has to be complicated by what I call the perfect storm of COVID. where you have that going on. Can you address? Have you seen some uptick in the need? Is it economic factors that are driving it, or is there something else that's behind it with what we're going through currently?
Well, there's been some areas that have been very much exacerbated by the pandemic issues, like transportation, volunteer run transportation programs. Now there are no volunteers available to take veterans to their medical appointments and other appointments. That was a huge issue prior to the pandemic. Now it's almost impossible to get any kind of transportation, especially, and let me clarify, the veterans that we work with, they can be elderly, they can have underlying health conditions. The bottom line for us with working with them is they're just not able to understand and determine what services are available for them, and then how to actually receive the services. So fill out the application, talk with the service providing organization, and get the service. So the transportation piece was absolutely exacerbated. Veterans being able to get healthcare, dental, vision. Now that we're kind of over the hump of understanding what we have to do differently within the pandemic, there are issues with veterans getting into community clinics and other clinics such as those, because they're not taking additional patients, or their patient backload appointments go so far back. It's not feasible for someone who needs an appointment right away because they literally cannot see anymore.
Mm.
That it's not helpful. In fact, we're having a panel discussion amongst the experts to include Commissioner John Maxwell on the 16th of February. George Mason University is our partner hosting us, and we're going to talk about some of these big issues. It's transportation, medical appointments across the healthcare spectrum, and also the challenges around IT from the veterans perspective. They may not have the capability to understand how to get through a web-based system, or they may not have a laptop to begin with. They can't afford it. They can't afford internet. They have a pay by minute phone plan. So some of those IT challenges from the veteran perspective are critical to understand why they can't access. And two, from the organizational standpoint, a lot of their web applications are just so confusing and convoluted. Our veterans can't figure out how to make it through their website. Too much information. It's just, I'm sure you've been on websites where it's like, okay, what button do I press to get to this next page? If it's hard enough.
Our guests won't know this, but as I shared with Angela before, I spent an hour on the phone with Verizon today because I couldn't negotiate their website and get the answer I needed. But yeah, it's overwhelming. It's this morass of information that gets thrown at you, and you have a hard time navigating it. How many uh, how many people are you typically helping in a given period of time, Angela?
Well, we're helping like hundreds, like looking at 2020 throughout the year. But the piece I really like to impress upon people, because we focus on special niche of veterans, we're looking at case management hours. What may be 20 people, but we average like 10 hours per veteran on average of taking care of them. And that usually doesn't stop once we get a veteran that we're helping. Normally, after we take care of one service, they will need additional services, because our intake we do is comprehensive. We want to meet their immediate needs, but then there's other things that they may need help with, and that could be PTSD counseling. Issues around depression and suicide are huge right now.
Mhm.
Not to say they weren't before, but the pandemic and some of these issues with regards to being in home and not out socializing and things like that are having a huge impact on our veterans. So we help comprehensively and holistically, meaning we ask around 100 questions. There's about 100 data points and information that we collect from our veterans. And then we look at the priorities of needs. And finally, after we work with them on the things that they need help with, we want to get them engaged with the community, if they want to be. And before the pandemic, that would be maybe getting out to an American Legion for, bingo, or
Mhm.
volunteering, or maybe even employment, depending on what they might want to do. So getting them re-engaged and improving their quality life is really our bottom line. just the meeting the urgent needs are critical, of course, but improve quality of life is the overall goal.
Have you got I mean, the names can be kept secret to protect the innocent, but are there some particular stories that pop into your mind that you've worked on that have been particularly gratifying for Nova vets over the last 5 or 6 years?
Oh, so yeah, there's so many. We one of our initial veterans that we're still helping today, Arthur, without giving out any other information, he's been one of those veterans that came to us that we started helping with regards to transportation, getting to medical appointments, food, and getting his utilities set up to include internet. Now getting household goods for him, and this is after 3 years of he's been with us for 3 years now. He was one of our first transportation emergencies, so to speak, trying to get him back to the VA hospital in DC when no transportation organization was willing to take him. So
Hmm.
I literally put act out and grant you, there's at least 30, 40 transportation organizations in the Northern Virginia area. There's no
Hmm.
lack of organizations. It was just lack of those that would step up and do this kind of like within 24 hours. So an independent medical transport company said they would take them. I put like a note on my personal Facebook and said, hey, we need help. And somehow or another, this partner got wind of us and just stepped up and not only took Arthur to his appointment in the morning of the VA, but waited because the VA pushed his time back 3 times for his surgery.
Oh,
He was
goodness.
there until after dark, and we got some really cool pictures. And then this volunteer literally took Arthur out for dinner because he hadn't eaten since the night before, and got him fed and they got him safely home. And that's just the first part of the story. Arthur's been a volunteer with us ever since then.
Yeah.
We just did Reese Across America, and Arthur came out. He's in his 70s, and he unloaded wreaths off the tractor trailers and handed them out to our volunteers to distribute. And he was going all day for like 3 of the 4 days we did Wreaths Across America. So that's like the ultimate story in veteran support, is not only we help them, but they turn around and they really want to give back. So one of my favorites.
That is a good story. Virginia is not the largest state for veteran population, but might, as a percentage of our population, the concentration of veterans in Virginia is pretty large. Virginia has a number of programs and seems to be focused on veteran issues. Have you done some work with and can talk about some of the Virginia programs that are specific to our home state?
Virginia programs, you mean like from the state level, or just what we may be
Right.
doing differently?
Yeah, from the state level first, because Virginia has focus on business. Virginia's focused on homelessness. At least that's the marketing side of it. Are there some particular programs in Virginia that could be a model for elsewhere, or are there some things that maybe we need to be doing better?
Well, there's definitely things we need to be doing better. Our Nova Veterans model was developed to be turnkey over any region across the nation. I developed it that way because every region is a little bit different in their agencies and their nonprofits and their for-profit and their needs basically for their veterans. So we developed this organization to be turnkey, and also it covers a specific niche of veterans that aren't getting helped at all. They've definitely fallen through the cracks. So just because they have very little ability, the veterans, to reach out and even find us. So we have to get very creative in how we find out who they are and get them into our system. But aside from us, the Department of Veteran Services does an excellent job with the mental health piece and comprehensively looking at our veterans that we work with them on and getting them, the things that you were talking about with regards to employment and transitioning support and things of that nature. So they're a close partner of ours, and we love what the Department of Veteran Services is doing. Like you said, Virginia has one of the largest veterans population in the nation. I believe we're fourth, after California and Texas and Florida, but we're right in there. We have a ton of veterans and military, and just a great amount of support along those lines too.
So let's talk about mental health issues a little bit in more depth. Are a lot of the folks you see struggling with some mental health issues, are they sort of the weaker part of the population, or uh, is that do you see a lot of that, or is the system just so complicated that everybody needs help?
Well, the system is complicated. I will say a kind of a staggering statistics that I found, a couple of years back was that the older veteran population, 65 and older, has the highest number of suicides. And most people are thinking post 9/11 and that era of veterans, but literally the largest number of veterans committing suicide are the elderly. And I think that's impacted by multiple factors. I believe it's impacted by loneliness and isolationism is one thing. I believe sometimes veterans are so used to serving that once they get to a certain age and they don't feel like they have a purpose anymore, that can really weigh on them. I absolutely know that their lack of ability to get the services and the resources they need play into that depression and sadness and hopelessness at times. So it's a combination of issues. And then we have the other side too, as you probably are aware, we have veterans who are very proud, and they don't want to ask for help. And I think they suffer in silence. And those
They
are the
tend to gut it out, don't they?
they do, and I think that's kind of a generational thing. Our older veterans that we see, Vietnam, even Korea, and now, Desert Storm, Desert Shield, those over 50 are becoming part of that population as well, and just being able to reach some of those veterans and get them re-engaged, if that's all they need is just to get re-engaged to feel better, we want to be able to do that, too, going forward. So we want to offer, I mean, on our website, we have recreational, and fitness organizations that are doing things for veterans. And of course, we're limited to what we can do now, but it's our goal to do that final piece and, improve their quality of life, get them engaged. And if they need a purpose, we always have volunteer opportunities. So we're always willing to work with them and get them involved and, around us.
Uh, Quick question for you. I guess now women make up, 10 or 11% of the military services, maybe a little more. My numbers could be wrong. Is there representative number of women coming through Nova Vets that are veterans seeking help as well?
Without having those statistics, we do track all the statistics and demographics along those lines, but I believe they make up about a third, and sometimes those are wives of veterans, especially the older veterans that I just mentioned that are calling and trying to get help on behalf of their husband that usually has
Okay.
that underlying like health condition.
Okay, okay. I was gonna say that could be a little startling if they were overrepresented, but they're actually representing their family members as well. Okay, so a couple of questions I want to be sure I don't forget to ask here as I'm thinking about that. One is, you said this is a model for other regions to emulate. Have you been sharing the lessons learned, or there's some other organizations around the country that you would say that you kind of helped learn some lessons, and some that in return you've learned some lessons from?
Well, we are working with other organizations kind of across the country on a minimal level, like the transportation issue. There are multiple organizations like Easter Sales and DAV, Disabled American Vets, and others that have transportation, programs for veterans. So working with them, but usually it's just like within a certain sector, like transportation or homelessness, or kind of the telehealth piece and making sure our veterans are equipped with computers and internet and the training to be able to work these devices and get their telehealth appointments. So it's been more kind of sector focused, but we are open and would love to work with other organizations like Combined Arms, for example, who are mainly in Texas right now, but they
Hmm.
this comprehensive approach too.
Tell me this: how are you staffed, and how do people volunteer to help with Nova Vets?
So we're staffed. We always have volunteer job descriptions and posts out kind of throughout the community, different forums, from Volunteer Prince William to Fairfax, and just different media. We, through our social media, put out job descriptions and ask for volunteer help. And about once a month, we have a volunteer orientation. So people can go to our website under events and look for our volunteer orientation. They can email directly info@novavets.org and ask, about involved. And again, we welcome all levels of volunteers, from just people that may want to help out for a certain event to those want to dive in and do something like grant writing or events management. We are 95% all volunteer. We only have 2 part-time positions right now, and probably a staff of around 30 or so, to include a lot of college interns who are coming on board and helping.
Nice. Tell me about the grant writing side of the business. When you say you're writing for grants, what's that process?
So grant writing is a particular skill, and a skill that I don't have. I have a little bit of it, but we are always ongoing looking for a grant writer. We actually had one for about 3 years who had to step down. He was retiring, and we are currently looking for one, but we are looking for grant writers that have a skill in this veteran space. For example, our biggest challenge is foundations are focused on, again, particular sectors like homelessness or employment or transition military, but what we do is comprehensive. We overlap all of those areas. We want to make sure if a veteran has a need in one of those areas, we coordinate the care with a partner here locally. But when we go to apply for grants, we're asking for help with this comprehensive model that we employ. So it's hard for foundations to kind of fit our square model into their round hole and fund us, because they just don't have the specific funding language to allow us to come in and do that. So it's been quite the challenge, get the funding and the foundations to recognize the critical gap and need that we're filling.
You've got a big challenge in orchestrating all of these things. You've assembled a board. I know we mentioned Carrie Kirk. Are there some other folks that are helping you with this effort at the board level?
Yeah, we have a great board, to include Carrie Kirk, one of our founding members, General David Bice, our chairman on the board, Marine Corps General, who is fabulous as well. We have a CPA treasurer, Ashley, who's on our board with us. Let's see, Paula Eckerd, who is also on our board. She's a former OCS classmate of mine, and she lives in North Carolina. She's not even local, but most of our work is virtual, and thank goodness, that's getting easier. We also have
Hmm.
Rear Admiral Matthew Carter on our board as well right now. He recently retired a couple years ago. I snagged him up pretty quick, so he's
Hmm.
too. So we have a pretty good board, but I'm literally always looking for qualified, committed board members that want to come in and give back. We want to diversify our board as much as possible and really reflect the community that we live in, because I want a perspective. I want our board to have a perspective across populations and the community. So the more people we have on, and we'll probably have a limit at 10 board members, and the better cross section of our community we have, I think the better we can help veterans and get these programs, in place and running and sustained.
Angela, what's the vision for the next 1 to 3 years here? What's the big, hairy, audacious goal that maybe you've got out there that's in your sights at the moment?
Yeah, well, we are looking at crossing over that threshold of just having 2 part-time individuals to at least 5 full-time individuals, and those that are supporting our direct services for our veterans, and those that would support the growth and sustainment of our program going forward. So getting enough revenue in to be able to, fund these positions, and what it costs to run this business. And nonprofits are a business, especially one of this magnitude. And, it's very systems heavy and data heavy. So we want to make sure we have those paid people on board with us, doing the work and growing our organizations, because we can't even come close to meeting the need right now. We're doing what we can with who we have, but we can't even do an outreach campaign because there are so many veterans in need that we wouldn't be able to support them all. So we're just really looking forward to being able to do that better and more efficiently.
Do you have an annual event of sorts that serves as the centerpiece for your fundraising activity?
We would have multiple events, but last year we were going to have our very first gala at the Sweeney Bar in Manassas, and we pushed that to September of this year. So we're going forward with that date, and hopefully, the pandemic will have calmed down by then, and we'll be
Right.
able to have this in-person event. But we're really
I think
looking.
everybody's looking forward to getting back together again. A
Yeah,
lot of pent up demand for that.
absolutely. It'll be a lot of fun. So the gala, I mean, I've always wanted to do a gala like this. We want to have a couple of veteran comedians on board. We're going to have a guest speaker as well. It's going to be kind of a high profile event, semi-formal and all that fun stuff. So looking forward to hopefully doing that in September and getting that out at the Sweeney Barn still in Manassas, which is a beautiful, beautiful venue.
We will try to help you promote that. Going back, you're having a panel discussion later this month. Tell us a little bit about that. I'm assuming that's a virtual event that people can attend.
Yes, so it's a panel event, and the mission behind that event is to look at the veteran health needs during the pandemic. So we're looking at answering three main questions and getting as much as the community involved as we can to determine solutions for these big questions. And we've discussed them all here during this program. The one is the IT challenges, the information technology, from the aspect of not having the device to not being able to understand and get through web-based applications and such. The second question is how to fix our veteran transportation issue and all the gaps around the organizations that already do provide. And we have a white paper that we're putting out that we researched and developed as of last year. So we have a lot of great information on that challenge. And the third piece is just the decline in diminishing of healthcare resources for veterans, just basic primary care, health, dental, vision, those that have just kind of gone by the wayside, leaving our veterans kind of struggling without any follow-on care. So those are the three big questions that we're going to ask. John Maxwell, Commissioner of the Department of Veteran Services here in Virginia, he's one of our panelists, as well as Miss Melissa Dargis of Nova Veterans. And we have John of, oh my goodness, his last name escapes me, of Combined Arms, who will be speaking. And we're looking at a public health representative as well. So I'm talking with them too, because public health plays into these needs during the pandemic. It's going to be the 16th of February. People can find that event and sign up. Eventbrite, Zoom,
Okay.
our
Well,
favorite.
we will put a link to that event on the show notes as well. Angela, it never ceases to amaze me. I get on these conversations and we get rolling, and next thing I know, we're out of time. And so I hope you will come back and join us again, give us an update on how things are going. We've been speaking with Angela McConnell. She's the founder and CEO of Northern Virginia Veterans Association, or Nova Vets. Good friend of ours, Kerry Kirk, giving him the big shout out today. VMI class of 1985. We'll go ahead and put that out as well. But just very pleased, Angela. Thank you for joining us and for stepping into the spotlight.
Sure, and thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. Help get the word out.
We will do exactly that. And as I said, we'll put all the links to the upcoming events, and we'll probably help you promote your event in September as well. Again, you've been listening to The Spotlight. We air on Tuesdays and Fridays and promote veterans and military spouses who are making a difference in our community. Angela McConnell has definitely been doing that with Nova Vets. Bravo Zulu to you. And that's a wrap.
Thank you for listening to Spotlight by VeteranCrowd. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and uploads, please visit our website at VeteranCrowdNetwork.com. We'll see you next time.